Why should you have to have a say? I know what God says. Oh, well then I better shut up. I think that's much more likely than that they were good democratic people all the way back. Don't think it's likely. Okay, as civilization developed after 3000 BC, however, the cities fell into war, and their military leaders or kings became more and more powerful. Now, maybe the military leader or the king had been powerful all throughout history, but as civilization advances, the kings become more powerful with civilization. But they were always a factor. It never was just a nice democratic tribe where everybody voted. I just doubt that. During the 3rd millennium BC, civilization moved up the rivers from its earliest home, the land of Sumer, S-U-M-E-R, into the river plains of the land of Akkad, A-K-K-A-D, as farmers improved their techniques of irrigation. It's a technology. And as the technology improves and evolves, as they invent one way to do things and then that fails, and then they invent another way to do things and that works a little better, and they adapt this and adapt that, go up to a different area of the country and you have to use slightly different method for slightly different soil or different whatever conditions, different crops you're growing. As this evolves, this technology becomes more sophisticated, then they're able to spread where they're using it, where they are using this technique of irrigation. The Semitic-speaking Akkadians eventually became dominant in Mesopotamia and tended to unite its little political units in a larger state. By the time of Hammurabi, his own city of Babylon, ruled most of Mesopotamia, and Mesopotamian civilization had become fully developed. If one could have flown over Mesopotamia in the 18th century BC, one would have been able to see at a glance that men had greatly rearranged nature for their own ends. The rivers still set the stage, but their precious gift of water was tapped and managed by canals which led across farmlands to smaller channels. Each year of Hammurabi's reign was given a distinctive name by which the year was dated. For example, his 33rd year was called, he dug the canal called Hammurabi spells abundance for the people. Thus he provided he provided Nippur, Eridu, Larsa, Uruk, and Isin with a permanent and plentiful supply of water. Now that was the abbreviated name of his 33rd year of reign. Quite a long name for a 33rd year. I almost like the Chinese method better of calling it the name of the rooster, the year of the rooster, the year of the chicken, the year of the dragon. Anyways, by canals and by roads, the countryside was divided into relatively regular plots which were defined by geometrical means. Farmers used wooden plows, seed drills, and stone hoes to reap 40-fold returns of barley. Now we heard earlier that the earliest farmers probably had a 5-fold return, 4 or 5-fold. 40-fold return they had in Mesopotamia. Probably nowadays then it must be 100-fold, maybe. Shepherds with dogs watched flocks of sheep and goats. Other areas were gardens with mud brick walls, set about with fruit trees and overshadowed by date palms. Asses on the paths and boats on the canals carried the rich products of the fields to the vital hubs, the cities. Lots of transportation by canals. They dug canals for irrigation, and they also dug canals for transport, and they used the canals for irrigation for transport, and vice versa. In these homes lived farmers who trudged out to their fields every day, though some lived in subsidiary mud brick villages. But beside the farmers dwelt smiths, potters, and a host of specialized craftsmen. Their daily food was essentially barley, which was baked in flat sheets of bread or drunk as beer. Now the flat sheets of bread, because I think it takes yeast to make it blow up and have all those airy pockets inside, and so without yeast it's bread, but it's just there's no air in it, though, if you can imagine. Or drunk as beer. Lots of calories in alcohol. You wouldn't know it because the alcohol industry, I guess, doesn't want calories to be put on. They don't want people to think of their drinks as having calories in them. A lot of calories in them, and a lot of calories from sugar in some of them. But beer has calories not only from the alcohol, which is a high caloric energy drink, but also from just the carbohydrates in it. So I used to hear about people drinking, when I was in high school, people drinking in the Middle Ages, from when they get up in the morning to when they go to bed at night. And I used to think that was very strange, because me and my friends in high school would go get drunk, and it didn't seem to me like I'd want to be, tossing hay or plowing or anything. But it is an energy drink. It's full of energy. You can drink it instead of eating a meal, and it tends to make you hungry. But my point stands. It's energy. It's energy in your body. Onions, lentils, beans, peas, dates, and various fruits were also eaten, but meat was much less common than fish. I guess you can call that meat. I thought fish was meat. Meat was less common than fish. Okay, now about writing. By this time, we have definitely passed from prehistoric to the historic age, for men could set down their ideas and describe events in writing. The historic age, age of civilization, and the beginning of privacy. The Sumerians had begun to draw conventionalized pictograms, representations of physical objects, like a little picture of a physical object, on clay tablets by 3500 BC. 300 years later, around 3200 BC, the tablets show that the scribes of Sumer took a tremendous step by developing ideograms. So it's a picture of an idea, like, for example, a day. And phonograms, which is a thing that uses a sound. For example, we might draw B for the sound B. So you have a picture of this and a picture of this and a picture of this, and it equals the word. You have to sound that out, and eventually I drop each one being a picture of something and just have a sound. But there were early steps. That was by 3200 they'd taken that step. These ideograms and phonograms became ever more conventionalized marks, which were impressed on the clay by a pointed stick or a stylus. In the 3rd millennium BC, the signs were rotated 90 degrees for easier writing, and then they lost almost all relation to any original pictorial value at all. From the Latin word cuneus for wedge, the Mesopotamian script is described as cuneiform, wedge-shaped. It's a little wedge-shaped stylus they used to write it with. Happened in steps. First there were pictures. It evolved. Writing evolved. First there were pictures. Then later on there were ideograms and pictographs and phonograms. And then these became all just phonograms without any idea or picture behind them, just the sound, a soundogram. That's the phonetic alphabet. Okay, most people in Babylon spoke a Semitic language, which is now called Old Babylonian. But the busy scribes also preserved the epics, laws, and other materials which had earlier been written in Sumerian. Pause for a minute there. I don't know what was going on with these scribes. Probably there have been books written about it. There's a lot that I've read across accidentally and just heard and seen. But these scribes copied and recopied texts. Tablet after tablet after tablet of copying of the same thing. And then they had old records from in the old temples and stuff. Hundreds of years old records, astronomical records and stuff like this, which they copied as well. Sometimes in languages that I don't know if they necessarily knew. There were not very many people who knew this stuff. Not very many of these scribes, because there are so many letters in the language. It's difficult to learn. But anyways, the Sumerian language, which cannot be connected to any known group of tongues, eventually became a sacred literary language like Latin in early modern Europe. Later on, cuneiform script was used for Old Persian, an Indo-European language, and there's no reason why it could not be employed to set down English. So, yeah, you could use cuneiform to write English. Fine. In that case, few of us would learn how to read and write, for the script involved about 500 to 600 signs. Now, you think that's a lot, 500 or 600 cuneiform signs to learn. The modern Chinese